Good evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and our magical 3-game winning streak has finally grounded to a halt as we kicked ourselves out of another game and were overrun by free kick Hawthorn. Joining me tonight to dissect another disappointing loss is George. Good evening, George.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, Ben Man. Good evening to all our Demonland listeners. And it's Groundhog Day here again for this podcast, where we'll talk about umpiring, goal kicking, fourth quarter fade-outs, and selection mysteries. So let's get into it where we've seen it all before.
I think you missed just the overall state of our forward line. Did you mention?
Oh yeah, sorry, I missed that one as well. But we will definitely talk about that.
See, when you're playing well, it's sort of a variety of topics that you get to. But when you're playing bad, it's sort of the same couple of topics to discuss. Also joining us tonight to help us break it all down is B-Man. Good evening, B-Man.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, George. Good evening, Demonlanders. It was a disappointing, did you say disappointing loss? It was more disappointing to lose, if that's a bit of a semantic, but not a surprise. I think it's like not a shock, I should say. It's, good context how long we were to win that game, like 390 in a 2-horse race, I think we started. So, from a sort of objective perspective, I thought we played terrific for much of the game. There was really a lot to like. It was really disappointing to lose again. We'll unpack that again. And obviously, like George said, we've all seen this movie before, and hopefully we'll unpack it a little bit today, because I came away. It was a really interesting game to come away from because there was a lot to like. It was frustrating to lose. I'll talk about it in a sec. But the actual expected score, I think, was probably about right. We lost that game by expected score by 15 points, which I reckon was about right, given that they were running over the top of us, let's face it, in that last quarter. But, it is so frustrating. That feeling, and something I think this has got to be addressed by the footy club, and, that feeling of we could have, we should have, if only we kicked accurately, blah, 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 blah. It's hard not to get frustrated. And it's also hard not to start when you're at the footy, at the, two thoughts I said to my mate, we both said to each other, I reckon half the footy crowd there who barracked for Melbourne would have said the same thing. Oh no, when we started missing those early shots, oh no, is it going to be one of those days? And then suddenly it was 4-7, 4-8, 4-11. It's like it is going to be one of those days. And, I was thinking about it after the game a little bit, but, thinking it's a bit of a weird cliche and a trap really that I fall into, that's for sure, which is, we could have or should have won that game. And then on the same side of that, the flip to that is, sort of ignoring the truth in the good kicking is good football. When Gunston went back and kicked that goal from the boundary, it's no fluke. He's an excellent kick, has been for 300 games or whatever he's played. And we've got poor kicks, and as I've said before, unfortunately, a big issue for us is our best player, one of our best players, top 2 or 3 track, is a poor kick. And I was saying to my mate at the footy is, where would track be in the pantheon of Melbourne footballers or league footballers if he was an elite kick? It'd be an unbelievable. He played a great game again, and it's hard to knock. I'm not knocking him, but his kicking is poor. So really frustrating from that perspective. But it's what's that sort of saying about the definition of insanity? Is expecting different result from the same group of players in terms of their kicking. It's not going to change much in the short term, is it? So at some stage or other, on that topic, I think there needs to be a conversation about what the root, and I know there's a question about fitness, and then there's the question about accuracy that George spoke to, and there's this theme that I've been talking about for ages about the club's communication has been poor, and just one of many examples was the communication about the findings of the so-called review. What review? You could just come to Demonland and say, well, what would you do? And I think it's time to call it out. And, at the risk of shooting Bambi, is we've got to a goal kicking coach. And so you can only judge him on 4 or 5 years of body of work. Our goal kicking is woeful. So, maybe find another role for him if Choco's so inspirational in other aspects of the game. Great. Love him in that thingo, but I think it's time for some, pretty clear criticism. And same goes with Selwyn Griffith in terms of the high performance program. And I know we'll get into it. So, lots to like, but lots of frustration.
Yeah, well, that's why it was so frustrating, because I would have copped, I would have been upset, but I would have copped the 15-point loss, like you said, on that expected score. But, we could have been in a very, very winnable position where, barring us falling apart, which we sort of did in the last quarter, but maybe we wouldn't have had we had a 30-point lead, a 28-point lead, whatever.
We might have. I look, and we'll get into it later, but there's no question. I mean, we've got enough evidence now, haven't we, that we're not fit enough. There's no, let's just call a spade a spade. We're not fit enough. Danced around this pin for ages. We weren't last year. We're getting beaten. The data speaks for itself. But one of the things that's really underestimated, I've talked about this, statistically, you do not lose many games of footy if you get to a 5-goal lead. If you get 30 points, teams don't lose very often. Of course, they do. Hawthorn still, and we should have, not deserved, that's the wrong, absolutely didn't deserve with our kicking, but we should have turned that dominance. We dominated the third quarter, and we should have turned that into a 5-goal lead. And then even with the fitness disadvantage or relative advantage to the Hawthorn team, who might well have still rolled over the top of us, footy, once you get a lead, you can suck time out of the clock. I don't know if you guys watched the Suns Bulldogs game. Bulldogs, who very much unlike us, look super, super, super fit. Ran all over the top of the Suns. The Suns were up by, I think, 35 points, almost got run over, but were able to suck the time out of the clock with 15 minutes to go, almost 10 minutes to go in that game. And so you just don't lose many games of footy if you get 5 goals up, and we should have been. So, we might still have been rolled over the top of, but I don't know, but you guys were both there.
Yeah.
You got that feeling when they got that first goal, it was it just felt inevitable, didn't it, from that point? Now, if we'd had a 5-goal lead, it would have been like, they're coming, can we hold them off? And you can waste a lot of time chipping around. But if you don't have a lead, there's no way you can chip around. You're playing on an equal playing field. And in that circumstance, Hawthorn were always going to run away with that game, I thought.
All right, well, let's do our housekeeping before we get stuck into it all. And each week I do invite our loyal listeners to support the podcast and leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts. And we really do appreciate that feedback. And as a token of our gratitude, I give that well-deserved shout out to those who take the time to share their reviews. And we head across the ditch to New Zealand this week as Room with a Pew writes, the Demonland podcast is a must listen to for any Demons fans. Andy, George and B-Man, along with the passionate community of listeners, do a phenomenal job of delivering thoughtful and comprehensive breakdowns of the stats and discussions of every single match. I first tuned in during the magical 2021 run and haven't missed an episode since. The podcast brings the Demon spirit into my car and home and even accompanies me while I walk the dogs. It's insightful, well-balanced commentary that respects the intelligence of the listener. The banter is great, but it's the genuine love for the D's and the game that shines through. For any fans outside Australia or even just outside Melbourne, this podcast is a must. It keeps you informed, entertained and emotionally invested no matter where you are. And thanks for the whole team for keeping us connected. Love your work. Go D's. And that's a great review. Thanks for that. Room with a Pew. Keep the feedback coming and leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcast, and we'll give you that shout out on the show. If you follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you want to leave feedback, ask a question, post a comment for the show, you can do so under our weekly podcast posts or slide into the DMs. You can also download and listen to the Demonland podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcasting apps, and also on YouTube. You can watch and listen to us. Just search for Demonland Podcast and find our channel, and please subscribe. And if you want to connect with other passionate Demons fans, we're all here because of the forum, demonland.com. So sign up and join in the conversation with fellow D supporters from across Australia and around the world. It's completely free. You can post questions or comments for the show, or you can just read or discuss all things Melbourne Demons. And if you want to jump on the air tonight, you can call us on 03 90163666. Not even sure that number works at the moment. We're out of Skype. I've got it through Microsoft Teams. I have no idea whether it's going to work or not. People did try to, Rostar did try to call us today, and there's no longer a message. There's no voicemail, so I've got to work out a new system for that. But Rostar did leave. He wrote something on Demonland, and I didn't have time to get to it, but maybe at the end of the questions I might read it out because he is a good contributor to the show. And guys, I don't know if you knew, but I always thought it was Rose Star. It's actually Row Star. So sorry about that, Rose Star. I've been saying your name wrong all these weeks.
I'm going to stick with Rose Star. I like it. It's a little bit more.
I'm positive Rose Star was saying Rose Star, so I'm blaming Rose Star.
I was reflecting on Rose Star's call a few weeks ago. It was an excellent call, and I thought that I think he's right about 6 to 10. That's about where we're at. I think finals probably, not probably, realistically, they're
it's out of it now.
Very unlikely, aren't they? So, you'll have to get that fixed, Andy, because you could probably listen to.
No, I can. I've got a number. I've purchased a number, but I had deleted it off my phone because you can have an eSIM on your phone as well as just your normal SIM, but there was a problem when I had switched over that I couldn't get voicemails for it. But what I'm going to do is I've got an old phone, so I'm going to whack the eSIM on there, and therefore I can have it switched off, and will have a voicemail. So I've just got to get that, but that'll be in the coming weeks because it is a good part of the show to have those voicemails for those people that do want to leave a comment. So that will be back soon. Our chat room. If you want to listen, if you're listening live and you want to join us in the chat room at demonland.com/podcast, and you can be part of the discussion in real time. We do go live every Monday at 8 p.m. So if you want to catch the show as it happens, head on over to demonland.com and tune in. Here's the match overview. So Melbourne's 3-game winning streak came to a crushing halt at the MCG as the Hawks stormed home to win by 35 points, breaking a 7-year drought against the Demons. And what began as a tense and error-ridden armed wrestle turned into a demolition job in the final quarter, with Hawthorn piling on 6-1, leaving Melbourne shell-shocked and once again searching for answers in the final quarter. The result continues a troubling trend for Simon Goodwin's side. Melbourne has been outscored in all but one final quarter this season, I think, and once renowned for our finishing power, the Demons now seem incapable of closing out tight contests or sustaining pressure when it matters most. Melbourne dominated much of the second and third quarters, particularly around the contest. Between the 7-minute mark of the second term and the end of the third term, the Demons had 23-5 clearances, 25-4 first possessions, and 5-2 centre bounce clearances. However, they failed to translate this dominance into scoreboard pressure, registering a wayward 4-10 to half-time, and their method of forward entry, frequently shallow and predictable, allowed Hawthorn defenders, particularly James Sicily, to intercept and rebound with ease. A critical moment came in the second quarter when Cozzy Pickett was clearly tripped in the goal square by Blake Hardwick. The blatant non-call, described by the commentators as one of the howlers of the year, robbed Melbourne of a certain goal and potential momentum swing. Silver lining on the loss is the continued rise of Harvey Langford. He was electric, finishing with 22 disposals and 3 goals. The number 6 pick from 2024 draft continues to prove himself a rising star favourite and looks to be very much at home playing senior footy. Max Gorn was once again immense, 15 contested possessions, 4 contested marks and 10 hit-outs to advantage, giving Melbourne the edge at stoppages even as the scoreboard drifted away. The latest loss adds to Melbourne's growing catalogue of second-half fade-outs and casts further doubt on their ability to resurrect their season. Their famed defensive system has been eroded by injury and inconsistency, with Jake Lever still absent, and the midfield missed the ferocity of Jack Viney, and Clayton Oliver's rare tagging role sort of negated his abilities to impact the contest. And fitness, both physical and mental, is emerging as a major concern. The D's inability to run out games, coupled with the VFL side also surrendering a lead and overrun in the final term, suggests a systematic issue that goes beyond tactics. For a team that prides itself on effort and discipline, and Melbourne's inability to deliver across 4 quarters is becoming the story of the season. They had their hands on the wheel for much of the day, but simply couldn't steer it home. And unless the Demons can find a way to play 4 quarters of footy and sharpen up their conversion in front of goal, they simply will not be able to climb out of the hole that they find themselves in. Big man, you can take it away with your stats files and tell us what the story of the day was.
Yeah, just before that, it's really interesting about the conversation about those fourth quarters and fitness and our game plan, because I really feel like there was a lot to like about the game. There was, particularly from our method, particularly in how we were playing. And just as, I guess, as an open question for us to sort of have on the table for the rest of the season is, I guess this is a question for both of you. Would you rather we stick to what we're trying to do in building a game plan and method that we want to go forward, knowing that it's going to be taxing because it's aerobically taxing to play that way for 3 quarters, knowing that there's a good chance that we won't be able to maintain that to the end of the game, therefore increasing the likelihood we're going to lose games? Or would you prefer that we try to minimise, negate our development with and focus on trying to win games? Where do you guys sit on that?
I'll quickly start. Finals is probably out of the question. So once you get to that point and they sort of concede that, I'm happy for them to take the year to try everything out, try different positions, real time. You can only do so much at training in training. You're not under match conditions. So take the rest of the year then and use it as a big training, against real opposition and try things out. If we're not going to make finals, make hay while the sun shines and use it to our advantage, I guess.
Yeah, and George?
I don't think we've got the cattle to play the game plan that we were training for at the start of the season. I don't think we actually have a game plan at the moment. What we did successfully for 3 quarters was the Ross Lyon game plan, which is try to stop the opposition doing what they want to do, and that was successful in this game. We got away with it for 3 quarters, but as soon as they were able to put their foot down, that was it. We just don't have enough. We have too many old players, and we don't have enough speed and enough talent to be able to employ a game plan similar to what the top teams are employing.
Well, I totally disagree with that, George. I mean,
I'm sure you would.
I totally do. We were brilliant in that first 3 quarters. We absolutely did. We didn't do what Ross Lyon did. Ross Lyon bloody parks the bus and puts the second half of that game the Saints played on the weekend is Ross Lyon. We attacked. We were aggressive. Our ball movement was first class. It was exactly what
slow and meticulous, which is Ross Lyon all over again. George, how many goals did we score?
None of the stats bear out what you're saying.
It doesn't matter what the stats say, Ben Man. We were slow and we stopped.
We weren't. We controlled the ball. Our uncontested possessions were equal. What we did do well is that what Ross Lyon does, he floods back. We didn't do any flooding back. That was really what my question is. Would you rather a Ross Lyon flood back to try and scare up a few wins, or would you rather do what they're doing for those 3 quarters? It's absolutely that is just not right, George. We played super exciting handball chains from the way we played. And not only does the eye tell you that all of the data supports that as well. So, I don't know, maybe you need to watch the replay because we played really exciting footy for 3 quarters. Those handball chains are so exciting to watch. So I don't know it was thrilling footy. It was great footy to be at the MCG. So many exciting bits of play where we chained up and linked from the back half. Tactically, I thought Goody had a really good game on some respects. I actually thought given, and I'll talk about this in a sec, given how many passengers we had in this team on the weekend and how poor some of the performances were, I thought it was a very impressive performance. Our method was as clear as I've seen it all year in terms of what we're trying to achieve, which is that use of the forward handball and handball chains, which is really what all the best teams are doing at the moment. It's certainly how Suns are trying to play. It's exactly what the Hawks are trying to do. I thought Goody had a really clear plan. It's one of the few times I've gone to a live match and been able to see what they're trying to do. And one of which was they really did a good job of allowing that first handball, which Hawthorn loved that first handball chain, the get and give to create the overlap and then chain up. And they allowed that first handball and then really, really, really sweated on the next handball. And that pressure, that forward running up and getting up forward in people's grill was brilliant in that first half. And that's what you can't maintain. That's what they didn't maintain. If we were playing Lion, we wouldn't have run out of method. We wouldn't have run out of puff. We just would have controlled the ball in the back half, flooded back. And, we were, if it weren't for our scoring, we had 15 scoring shots at halftime. Like, that's not Lion. So,
it's not the flooding back. It's the extras around the ball to stop the ball movement.
No, but that was part of the tactics to stop the Hawthorn chain of handballs. And as soon as we ran out of puff. As soon as we weren't able to run up to make sure that we were doing that forward press and leaving them no space and sweating on that second handball, as soon as that broke down, you could see it live that their ability to win clearances in that last quarter was off the charts because we ran out of that energy to bring the extras to the contest. So, yeah, I thought the method was really, really clear, and that hence my question about do we want to keep focusing on the method? And my answer to that question is we 100% do. That's which means we're going to lose lots of games in the last quarter and get run over, but so be it. We've got to keep practicing that method. It was thrilling at times. I thought, it was the best we've played almost all season in parts of that game. I totally disagree with that assessment of the game. But we'll jump into, first of all, so I thought this was fascinating and a great pointer to the future. Our player ratings, no surprise who's on top. Maxi, 16.8. Bit of context, though, like he's 20 being elite. We didn't have anyone at 20. But number 2, player rating, what a performance. Harvey Langford, 16 player points. He was our second highest rated player on the ground. Fell away in that last quarter. So young fella, that's not that surprising. He had a huge first half. He had 12, 13 player rating points at halftime and then 2.3, 0.7. He is a gun, that kid. Love him. Love the fact that he went back and kicked those goals. Love how fast his brain works. The snap that he did. He was thinking about laying that across the boot as soon as he got it. He looks a bit awkward with his kicking, but he's got that ability to think 2 steps ahead and get it to where he needs to get it. But his set shot as well was just absolutely terrific. Really impressive performance. Cos had an enormous last quarter when everyone else was starting to hit the wall. Cos had his best quarter, 8.4 in that last quarter. He had 14. He was our third highest rated player. One of the things I like about the player ratings is, like I've said before, is the way it makes you rethink your perception of what you've seen live. I thought Lindsay had a good game live, and he is so classy. I just really have so much time for Lindsay. Just the way he moves, his footy IQ, that bit of play he did where he won the contest on the outside. He's got some grit about him. So I thought he had a really good game, but I was really surprised to see how good his ratings was. His rating points were 12.8. So he was our 4th highest rating player. Trent Rivers continued his upswing. He was our 5th highest rated player. And this one was the one I highlighted. So he's our 6th highest rated player, and I would not have guessed this in a million years. And again, I think that's, for me, one of the benefits of sort of interrogating their data is to shake up some of those, I guess, confirmation bias or preconceived ideas. I worry about Steve May's lack of pace and thought that, and that sort of colours my assessments of his game sometime, and it did on the weekend. But he was our 6th highest rated player with 12.3. That's one of his best games of the season so far, at least from a player ratings perspective. I'll talk about the bottom 5 or 6 later. But yeah, how impressive is it to see our 2 number 2 picks, our 2 first round picks in this year's draft being in our top 5 players and best 22 locks, both of them, aren't they? The Bison's going to get, just bigger and bigger. So terrific performance from both of them. it worries me a little bit about Colt because those two players have gone straight past Colt. So good. So again, interesting what you're saying, George, and I guess sort of my vehemence about it, because my very first point was good was how we play. I thought that was the clearest example of what Goody's trying to implement with the method. Controlling the tempo is what Hawthorn doing. All the best teams have a combo of two speeds, being able to control the tempo, Collingwood being the best example, and going when it's time to go. I thought he had a really good day in the box in terms of thinking through how to take away Hawthorn's strengths, and we did a really, really good job of doing so until we ran out of puff in that last quarter. Our method, I thought, was really strong, particularly our forward handball chains and ball movement. And as part of that control, at one point in that first half, we had twice as many backward kicks as they did, as a way of demonstrating the way we're using the width of the MCG and not allowing them to get into there's no point getting into a speed battle with the best speed team outside of Collingwood in the AFL. And it also meant it took away, I think, a bit of their strength over us in terms of their small forwards. As I said, tactically, I thought that was really clever the way it was really, really evident. They gave that first handball, that link in the chain, and then smashed the second person. And so often Hawthorn really looked like they were lost in terms of their ball movement because of that. It really made it difficult for them to transition the footy. So many of the stats we'll talk about in a second, they really Hawthorn padded them big time in that last quarter. That was... but for the first three quarters, we really took the Hawks' strengths, negated the Hawks' strengths really, really well. And part of that was I thought our defensive shape was as good as I've seen it all season. One of the things that worried me a bit about May, and maybe he was better at it than I expected, or maybe than I thought watching live, is he's playing really aggressively in front of the player. But if it gets over the top of him, does he have the wheels to get back? But I thought Windsor is getting there defensively, still a work in progress. McVee probably still needs a little bit to grow, but his speed is super important. So I thought our shape was excellent, and there was clearly really good discipline from the players in terms of adhering to that shape, the system and the roles they were being asked to play. I thought that was a really impressive performance in terms of how we look structurally. I thought one of the really good things was, it was obvious that Van Ruin struggling with confidence. There was a couple of frustrating, obviously that mark that he didn't take, the difference that would have made if we'd got that first, if he'd taken that mark after a beautiful bit of play. One of the things is that bit of play was a great handball chain, really impressive handball chain from the middle of the ground and through the corridor to create that opportunity for where Cozzy, it was 2-on-1, wasn't it? Or Van Ruin, he's one grabber is not his strength, but he's clearly not confident. But I thought his rucking was excellent. I thought his tap work was really first class. He had 16 centre bounce appearances, 16 ruck contests. He won 9 of them, and at first hit, a third of the time, 37.5, 3 of them hit a target. So that's, he was really good in that sense. Pressure, we've talked about how critical pressure is. It was good without being great, but it was 180 in that first quarter. We were plus 16. They came out and looked a little bit sort of flat, I thought, but part of that was how well we did at stifling their game. I really think we did a good job of bringing that away. This was really interesting, though, because our second quarter, they came out and must have got an earful at three-quarter time there. We were down 17 for pressure in that quarter, 184 to 167. Third quarter, though, they came out flat again. It was really a mirror of that first quarter. So the first and third quarters were very impressive from a pressure perspective, 170 to 153 plus 17. And this one I thought was really good. So even though, and to me this shows, this is a really good number because clearly we are struggling to run out quarters. Clearly our fitness is not where it needs to be, but our pressure was 186 in that last quarter. Their pressure was 186 in that last quarter, which shows to me the fundamentals of corralling and putting in effort was there. So, as much as it was awful to get sort of blown out in that last quarter, it flattered them a little bit, that scoreline, I reckon. I was really pleased to see that we kept going with the pressure right right to the end of the game. So the last quarter was 186. It was our highest pressure rated period for the game. I'm not sure if it's in one of the questions, so sorry about that, Andy, but there was someone in the podcast thread noted that there's data around pressure inside 50. Is that one of the questions?
Yeah, but I don't know if that one, there is, I don't think I did that one. I'll pull that up while you're talking.
The reason I raised it is because there's a question about that someone at the poster had seen that the pressure in our forward half was poor. And I didn't even know that they did it in zones and that there was a way of knowing it in zones. And it really flagged to me how frustrating it is, the AFL locking up all this data. Why not just give it to us all? Just allow people who want to see it to do it. It's not like there's going to be bazillions of fans who are going to go, ruin club's IP. Come on.
It's not surprising with that pressure rating when we only had 5 tackles inside 50 for the whole game.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll speak to that a bit later. But it wouldn't. I'd love to know that data, and it's important. This, as I said last week, the match aggregate was 176. We were +4, but in some respects, what's important is that that's aggregated over a whole game or within quarters or whatever. But it's those burst periods where you take advantage, and that's what we failed to do. Is that at one point we were 240 or something to their 170 or something, and we didn't take advantage of that momentum.
I found the thing from Watson 11. He said that despite our overall pressure being 180, in our forward 50 it was only 90 compared to the Hawks 180 in their forward 50.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I just read that and thought, geez, why don't they just give us the data? I'd love to know that. And I think that was a big factor in the loss. And in a way, it was quite an impressive performance given our pressure was down, given some of our performance, given Chandler, I thought, didn't have as influential a game as he has done.
No, definitely.
Given, a number of players, and as George said, we only had 5 tackles inside 50, which has been what really we've built our performances on in our 3 wins. So given those things, and to me that speaks to the method. I thought our method was top shelf. But tactically, we really did a good job on taking them away. Pickett, Cozzy had his highest pressure rated game for the season, 66. He's only averaging 30. Well, not only he's averaging 38.7 pressure points. He had 66 pressure points. Harry Sharp played a full game, 47. He was second. Track put on a lot of pressure. He was third with 44. And this one was terrific. Xavier Lindsay's season average for pressure points is 27.4, and he applied 37 points of pressure. I don't say this lightly, but he reminds me of Flower in the way he moves, like a tall player with that sort of elegant movement. I've really got a lot of time for him. And when he fills out, he's a player who could easily roll through the midfield, I reckon. And Claz had an interesting game, I thought. 15 point. He had 34 pressure points, but he's averaging 51. So given he was playing a tagging role, he would be a little bit disappointed with that. He actually played better than I thought. He had one of his best scoring player rating games, 11.2, I think it was, or 11 something or other. So he was more effective from that perspective than I thought. It's a real worry, though, because we lost Viney. And his pace is a worry. Oliver's pace is clearly a challenge for us. We were +12 for contested possession. Goody would have been thrilled with that. Good context for this is that we're level for contested possessions or pretty close at quarter time. And then after that, we maintained a buffer of about 10 right through the game. So even to the end. Even though they rolled over the top of us, that was about we couldn't run. We couldn't do that defensive running that we were doing so well in the first 3 quarters to make it difficult for them to transition. I think we toughed it out right to the end in terms of our contest work. Turnover, it wasn't too bad. We scored 46 points on turnover, 6-10. It could have even been more if we'd been, if that was 10-6, then suddenly we come close to winning that game. So that was pretty good. They they scored 44, but context, that's below our season average. So our season average is we're giving up 48 points on turnover, and they scored 44. we were averaging ourselves 39.8 points on turnover, and we scored 46 in this game. So that was a real positive, and that was really a function of two things, I think: pressure we applied, but also that game plan of being able to. I really liked how our defensive shape looked. We did a good job of taking that, creating turnovers, a couple of which were inside 50 goals, which was terrific. Bad
unforced turnovers, Ben Man,
from us. I don't know. Well,
17-7.
Yeah, so that goes to our skills, doesn't it? So that's got its home in the ugly, George.
Yeah,
We'll get there. So, bad. I said field kicking. So my number one bad was field kicking. What was it?
17-7.
Yeah,
that's
right.
That's the unforced turnovers.
Yeah, and so a lot of them were. It's just those kicking skills, isn't it? And the field kicking, the last kick inside 50 was average. Again, there were a few times where it was like doing my head in, about kicking to the disadvantage of the forward. What is that about? I take your point about feeding Sicily. However, I have to say I don't want to make this a, let's pile on Fritter podcast, but I have to say a couple of those times, he's always going to get those marks, but you've got to bring the ball to ground. He was on him for the entire second half. Spargo to, you can't say Spargo to Sicily was a winning move. But geez, I thought Fritter and the rest of the forwards, to be honest, didn't do a great job of halving contests down back that we should have been halving. Just a funny thing in terms of the way we're playing those chains of handballs, we're clearly moving it. We'll take the corridor when there's the kick, but we're moving like a lot of the teams now, Cats being one of them, moving them around the outside, and then we're coming in diagonally from the halfback flank. And I wonder, George, whether I reckon one of the challenges that Van Ruin's got at the moment is if you watch how many goals or how many marking opportunities we're getting now running diagonally with the flight of the ball. So not in the classic running chest forward to the goal square with the leading forward coming out, which is what Van Ruin's sort of, like most full forwards, that's their go. We're doing lots of these kicks, and Langdon's doing a lot of them. The sort of lateral kicks on the 45 back into the corridor inside 50, meaning that the mark that Fritter took where he ended up missing it. But he ran sort of with the, diagonally came in. It was coming from the opposite direction and took that mark. I don't know that Van Ruin is judging those balls properly in terms of, it's a little bit different. So perhaps that's a factor. I thought lack of crumbing goals was a real issue for us. Like who's on the, the ball hits the deck, not that it did hit the deck that often. Who's kicking those crumbing goals if Cos isn't? Spargo didn't have a great game. Chin didn't have, the sort of form he has been in. I thought we had some really bad luck though. Of course you always get bad luck, but I thought Track had a nearly massive game, but there were just a number of bad bounces where, where it was just a nearly day for Track. He had so many moments where, he could have had a breakout game, I thought, or just a massive game. The one that really stood out for me, I don't know if it was bad luck or bad play, to be honest, but that we did a brilliant bit of play after forcing a turnover. It was a great bit of pressure where Track did that kick to Sharp and they called not 15, and it wasn't 15. I don't know why Sharp didn't release the ball straight away, but that was a beautiful bit of play that was, it was poor decision by Track. He should have gone long because it was always going to be 15, not 15. They scored a goal directly from that one. So, this one, so points from defensive half was not great. So we only scored 22 points from the defensive half. For context, season average is 24.7. Hawthorn scored 54. We're giving up 39.8. 54, I don't know because I'd drill down on this, but I suspect half of that would have been in the last quarter, wouldn't it? When they were running on, half of their score was in that last quarter. And that's what we denied them really well, I thought, up until three-quarter time. But once they got going, you saw the difference. You saw what the Hawks were trying to do. And if you can't defensively run and that all-team defensive running, you can't stop a running team like that. So drilling down a bit on that ball movement, I'm trying to get my head around this to sort of get a sense of what's good and bad. That's why I haven't really spoken to it. But Champion Data has done this for a while now, but now Wheelo has this data on Wheelo.com. So the transition chains, this is where they got us, but it was defensive 50 to forward 50. We only did that 11% of the time. They did it 27% of the time. A lot of these are padded out in the last quarter. So they were plus 16%. In that game, defensive 50 to score we only 5.7% of the time when we went from our defensive 50 to scoring 5.7. That's terrible, really. And they did it 15% of the time. Defensive half to forward 50 chains 24 to 31. Again, they beat us in that. And defensive half to scoring percentage 10.6 to 19.2, almost twice us. Again, it's a little bit padded because that last quarter blew out some of these numbers, but we were matching them, I suspect, for those numbers in the first three quarters pretty well. But we really, speaking to that method, we really need to be taking advantage of when we do. We got a goal to end all the way. We transitioned for a couple of goals, which was exciting. And so there were a couple of really exciting goals in that from the back half. This was bad, no question about it. Almost made it in the ugly is that we only scored a point from a centre bounce. I mean, that's definitely ugly. They scored 13. We're down 12 from centre bounces. We've been dominating in that stat in the last 3 weeks. Before this, stoppages was a worry. 1 goal, 3-9 to 4 goals, 3-27. What was interesting about this is we're giving up stoppage goals. That's been one of our things. So they are too. So that's really low for them. They're giving up lots as well. So 27 is not a huge number, but we're down 30 therefore for clearances, from scores from clearances. Given we've got the best ruckman in the history of the game, it was a huge blow, I think, losing Viney because, I don't know, George, what did you think about the move Oliver to Newcombe?
I've said before I'm not a fan of tagging, and I think this showed why you don't tag, in the sense that you don't get what probably your better extractor in the middle trying to sit on someone else who's also their best extractor, so it becomes at the very best a 0-0 draw. Oliver didn't touch the ball. Did not touch the ball for 22 minutes in the first quarter.
In the first quarter,
where he got his first possession and only possession for that quarter. That's you don't put Oliver on. You put Sparrow on or somebody else on.
Well, that's essentially what I thought. That's why. When I think the numbers speak for it is that we only got a point from centre bounces, and so I think that is given some of these numbers, it's remarkable how close the game was to a degree, or how well we were performing. And I agree is that I would have preferred that they just say to him, use him as burst player, and if they use him like 50-60% and say go on, just go nuts for 10 minutes and come off. And then use a Sparrow or bring in a Brown to do that job, or someone who's got that chops to go with Newcombe. This is the one that almost is ugly, but you're right, George. This totally jumped off the page for me. Tackles inside 50 after dominating in this stat. So we've had, I forget the numbers, it was 12 last week and 17 the week before from memory. We can only manage 5 tackles inside 50. And look, again, I don't want to, this is, I hate jumping on players or anything, but one of the problems with players not bringing heat in the forward line, like Jefferson and Fritter, is that if you get a drop-off in the player's pressure that normally is fantastic, like Chandler, then it's you fall away and get to this number. Tackles inside 50, only 5 this week. And I think that was a really big factor in the game in terms of our inability to make hay while the sun shine with our dominance. We were doing a lot right, but not only weren't we kicking accurately, we just weren't keeping it in there. It was getting waltzed out way too easily and chained out. So, and you mentioned this briefly, Andy, this was bad. We won the first possession 41-28. We won clearances 38-27, but we scored just 1-4 to their 6-4 from stoppages. They recorded 4-8. This one was terrible. So we scored 1-4 to their 5-3 from the 15 to 30 metre zone from goal. Two of them were misses from Fritter, which were just shockers. Ugly. Look, there's no other way of saying it, but ugly is our goal kicking. Good Lord. So the expected score in the game was 70.9. That's what we should have got. We scored 56. Their expected score was 85. They got 91. They've got elite players. That Watson, as much as he frustrates me, it was right behind that kick. It was a beautiful kick of the footy. So they, the game was closer on the expected score, but it goes to our accuracy. General play, we were 2-5-17. They were 6-6-42. Set positions, only 35.7. Accuracy, 5.38. A couple of them were just heartbreakers. That one Fritter missed was just an absolute heartbreaker, particularly given Van Ruin had just dropped that sitter. Not sitter, but he had to take that mark. So our kicking... our goal kicking is just awful. I thought this was really, really, really not great. So, and it probably, didn't help. We didn't have Petty playing, but we only took, how many contested marks for the game?
Would have been mostly Max.
Many Max. It could have been mostly Max. We only took 2 for a whole game of footy. But what's remarkable is they only took 3. So they were only on a perfect day for footy. I mean, George has spoken about this a bit. Contested marking is going the way of the dodo, except in that Adelaide Crows game. There were a few crackers in that game. And the Cats, geez, I wish we could get Jesse Hogan into our forward line right about now. But only 2 contested marks. We brought in tall players. We brought in Jefferson. We brought in JVR. We've got the best ruck in the league, and we could only take 2 contested marks for a game of footy on a perfect MCG day. It's like, that's not great. And just finally, the last quarter, it just was ugly, wasn't it? So they kicked 7 of the last 8 goals, 4 goals, 1-0. So from clearances. And you'd think, oh, wow, that's a blowout in clearances. So they kicked 4 goals, 1. We didn't score a single point in that last quarter from clearances. The clearances were 11-10 in that quarter. So despite it almost being even for clearances, they were able to waltz. And that's when we stopped being able to, we run out of puff, so we weren't able to stop that second handball, and they got that chain going, got it outside that circle that they talk about into space, and they really hurt us. They had 22-10 inside 50s in that last quarter. They scored from 45% of their inside to 30% for us of inside 50 entries. And then just finally, some of our performances were, I have to say, pretty ugly, and I know we'll unpack them a bit, but our bottom 3 rated players were players who really owed Goody something, I thought. Matthew Jefferson, he negative 3.5 player ratings before being subbed off. Bailey Fritsch was second lowest, 2.6. Colston Tolstrup had another great game. I'm a huge fan, but I think, come on, you can't be putting that sort of performance. And Sparrow had his worst game for the season, 4th bottom. Spargs only marginally better than that, so had an average game. See some of these numbers and think, God, we did all right to be vaguely in this game. And when you look at the overall game, the player ratings, the bottom 4 players in this game in terms of rating were Melbourne players, Jeffo, Fritsch, Colt, Sparrow, and then all, so 3.5, negative 2 point, negative 3.5, negative 2.6, 0.9, 1.3. Their worst player was Finn McGuinness, 3.3, and then Connor McDonald. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 of the 6 of the top, or the bottom 9 players, the bottom 8, 6 of the bottom 8 players in terms of player ratings were demons. Which is, by any measure, that's ugly. So, I in some respects, we did well given, so many players were passengers. And I literally, without a word of a lie, when Jefferson got a kick right in the last bit of the last quarter, I suddenly realised I'd forgotten he was playing. I forgot he was playing at all.
I hope you didn't see him get a possession in the last quarter because he was off the ground by then.
In the first quarter, I mean, in the last few minutes of the first quarter, he got a possession, and I thought, oh, hold on, he's playing? Is he? I'd completely forgotten.
Yeah, because somebody dropped it on his head.
So, and his intensity, again, I don't want to bash players, but there was out where you sit, George, he would have been running towards you. It's one of my pet hates, and I bet you it's a coach killer, and he'll get dropped this week, is one of those balls where he expected the ball to go over the boundary line and it bounced on its head and came back in. If he'd been going hell for leather, he would have been right in that contest, a good chance of winning. But because he'd stopped and propped, assuming it was going to go out, he was on the back foot and they ended up winning, taking the ball away from that contest when he should have been all over it. And I thought to myself at that moment, that's really, that's a problem because, JBR will be fine. He'll get there. And in large part because that isn't a problem for him. He would have smashed that Hawthorn play to Kingdom Come probably if he'd given half a chance. You don't give up on the footy. It's the golden rule. You play to the whistle. You don't, and he's just, those second efforts aren't instinctive enough. And it was really noticeable, the lack of defensive grunt in the front half. Like you said, George, the 5 tackles, that's where you need him to be laying tackles. You need Fritter to be laying tackles, particularly when others are down. So,
all right, well, let's get into our questions. Master Chief writes, the umpiring in this match was nothing short of horrendous. I was genuinely gobsmacked to see the free kick count even on the final the free kick count even on the final stat sheet. However, it is always the free kicks that you don't get that kill you. The blatant non-call on the trip to Cozzy in the goal square was inexcusable. Wasn't tripping once considered a reportable offence? Melbourne should be demanding a please explain from AFL House. And once again, free kick Hawthorn. Clintosaurus says, thoughts on the umpires? We'll give you those in a minute. Monocular says, do the club ever complain about the umpiring? The decisions we copped when the game was on the line were shocking. D for Life says, Cozzy didn't get a free for the trip and Fritsch got pinged in the back line after a soft shove from Sicily. Cost us 2 goals. Supreme Demon asks, should a formal complaint be made to the AFL about the poor quality of umpiring in our match? Well, I've got some audio from Tom Morris about the AFL's thoughts on this, so have a listen to this.
So I've spoken to the AFL today regarding this crucial non-decision in Melbourne's loss to Hawthorn yesterday. While the league offers clarifications occasionally on key areas, it won't do so with this trip from Blake Hardwick on Cozzy Pickett.
So how nice of the AFL to not even acknowledge such a blatant missed free kick. I was also shocked that the free kick stats were even at the end of the match, but as one of the posters above mentioned, it is always the free kicks that you miss, the free kicks that don't get paid that hurt you the most, and there's simply just no stats on those type of things. 35-point margin probably says that the umpiring didn't have an impact, but the timing of the Cozzy one, who knows?
Who knows, Andy? Gets right. That, we score a goal straight away, bang.
Yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, only a few points down. Look, plenty of other reasons we didn't win the match. Poor umpiring doesn't help, but it's the least of our problems, George.
Umpiring, here we go yet again. What's worse is the AFL's now trying to cover up this particular sort of scenario that we saw on the weekend. Our listeners will remember, for example, when was the Adelaide game when last year, not us, it was, I can't remember who Adelaide were playing, when they were denied a goal from an umpiring error. The AFL came out and said, we made a mistake. That's fine. Everybody understands, everyone's happy about that. But that's a sharp contrast to what they're doing now, particularly around this one. That was blindingly obvious to everybody, and yet the AFL doesn't want to do anything about it. It's just ridiculous. Not only was it one umpire, there are 4 umpires on the ground. It simply is beyond me how 4 umpires can miss something as blatant as that. It's not like, holding the ball or around the neck or pushing the back in a congested situation. It was straight out in the open, very blindingly obvious. I think there's a real problem with the way that the umpires actually umpire the game in the sense of positioning. I'd use the analogies with both soccer and basketball, where if there's something there, you call it. Which umpire decides to mouth that or announce it, that's sort of irrelevant. But if an umpire sees something happening, they should just call it. So it's simply beyond me how 4 umpires cannot see that. Then to top it off, of course, they missed the throw that Cecily did with the ball, just to top it off, making everybody feel even worse.
Just in terms of the overriding, there was a umpire there was a free kick that the Hawks got in front of goal, that the umpire that was right there actually called play on or whatever, or what, that it wasn't a free kick.
That's right.
And then the other umpire calls it. So, I mean, what, does that override it? Even if he's wrong, he's so far away and maybe he gets it wrong. The guy who's right there said play on.
Yeah, I'm quite happy if someone overrides a missed call. Yeah. It's better to call something than not call something.
No, but it wasn't that it wasn't called. The umpire there saw whatever happened and said, no, I don't think it's a free kick or whatever, play on. And then, okay, he's overridden that. I can understand overriding a non-call or something. Yeah. And just to know that some of those umpires that are hundreds of metres away are finding, God no, they can see a too high that may or may not be there, but they can't see this bloody trip anyway.
Yeah, there were numerous things which were very annoying in this game. There was one right in front of us where they called insufficient attempt against Clayton Oliver. I reckon he was surrounded by about 10 players.
That was unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And I think it actually came off someone's leg in any case.
But he was getting it forward.
He was trying to get it out of
half clearance, gets it forward.
There should going forward.
Later, the other side of the ground, almost the identical thing happens. It doesn't get paid.
Going forward shouldn't be deliberate unless it's an obvious.
Well, it's not the rule isn't deliberate. It's insufficient attempt to keep it.
I know, but you should be allowed to go forward. The whole point is to gain territory and go forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Particularly given he was. Like, it wasn't really, that they allow. I don't understand why they allow, this idea that, it's come off the side of the boot. Why? It's still insufficient. Like, how do their mind reading? In that circumstance, he had a half a second to kick it and did the right thing to get territory. Like he's coached to do.
And as I think, George, you might have said, or Big Man in the past, then just get rid of the boundary umpires and make it last touch.
Just do what the AFLW. It's so obvious.
Yeah. Anyhow, there were, that one really annoyed me because it happened right in front of me, and you could see how blatantly, obviously wrong it was yet again. The Cozzy trip, it was the scores were 29-20 at that point. If he'd scored that goal, that brings it back to 3 points. The momentum would have changed, because when players are running into open goals like he was, that really fires up the team.
And it was a brilliant bit of lead-up play. It would have been a bummer not to have got a goal, or we didn't get a goal in the end. And because we crossed, that was another one of those balls they're crossing sort of laterally, and Frida really was in good position to mark that ball.
Yeah, and I think actually they went down the other end and scored a goal after that.
No, they didn't. And then it actually came back up, and this is where it's nuts. It was so obvious it was going to happen. He got a free kick.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
But it wasn't really, because he slipped down. So it was like a payback, and it's,
anyhow, we're going to continue to get that sort of quality of umpiring. When you finish 14th the previous season, you just get the bottom of the barrel with the umpires, even though we had Stevic in this game. But, we've seen how many times we get Williamson and T as umpires. It's just not surprising, So until you get to the blockbuster type games with decent umpires, you're going to have to expect similar. The worst part that really, let's stick the knife right into Melbourne, is after the AFL decided that there wasn't actually a trip there, or we're not going to talk about it. The match review officer hands out 2 tripping adjudications, one to Rowan Marshall. He gets a $1,500 fine for an attempted trip. Not even a real trip, an attempted trip. and George Hewitt gets $6,000 fine for tripping. So how the AFL
week?
can possibly come out after that?
Is this week?
Yeah, this is this week's one. Yep.
And Blake Hardwick didn't get anything.
And he didn't get anything. Hardwick got nothing. And
is it intention? Are they saying that he fell over and he tripped him as his hand was going down?
They're not going to talk about it, as Tom Morris has
said, yeah.
They're not going to talk about it. So that's the situation that we've got with the umpiring. But we've spoken about this before. It's going to continue like this if the AFL don't refine the rules, particularly around things like insufficient intent and professionalism for umpires and all sorts of things that we've spoken about so many times. It's getting ridiculous.
It's getting ridiculous. And I had a really bad, I'm not sure if it was a flu or cold I was off work for most of last week, and I was really probably shouldn't have gone to the footy, and I was absolutely thought I'll go to the footy.
Thanks. You came and sat next to me at half time. Thanks for that. I wasn't feeling well today, so I'll blame you.
Oh, well, really? No, it was fine, actually. I was well over past the, infectious stage. But I thought, because my throat was sore, I wasn't going to yell. And, that didn't last very long, particularly with the umpiring. And I couldn't. I was so ropeable, obviously, with the Cozzy one. But it's like, I just keep thinking it's a $1 billion industry, more. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And they allow, I've used up my rant time tonight, so I won't go on a rant about it. But I've said this the last few seasons. I'm convinced that the AFL have no interest in doing anything about it, because where do they get their money from? It's a not-for-profit thing, the AFL. Where do they get the money that runs the game is from the media rights that they sell. And the media is complicit in this. No one wants to shake it up. No one in the media seems to want to go to the obvious answer, is make umpiring professional, is to do what George says, clean up the rules. They're not pushing for that. The AFL doesn't want to do it. And I really believe, this is not some sort of tinfoil hat, is that it's conscious, it's deliberate. And because every year around this time you'll get a period of big discussion about the umpires and about how poor they are, and it dominates the footy news cycle, and gives 360 a chance to do some long editorial and blah blah blah, or and they this constant refrain, that the pushback about make mistakes. Yeah, okay, sure, umpires make mistakes, but if they're making the same mistakes over and over and over, footy teams are held to account, coaches are held to account, boards are held to account. Why don't you hold umpires to account? And your point, George, is an interesting one about how, what I would like to know is, of course, the AFL don't have to say there was no confusion. Often they come out to say, look, we'll acknowledge that one was wrong. Everyone could see it was wrong. What I want to know is, how did they not make the call? And I suspect what happened is that you've got the 4 umpires all expecting to make a call. No one does. The play goes on and the moment's lost. And so I suspect, so that's the very start. If you had professional umpires, you could do them in teams who could communicate properly. There was one that didn't get any sort of, by this stage the game was dead, and it didn't really got people annoyed, but it was more of a it was like the game's over annoyed, that I thought was in some ways worse than the Cozzy one. Not as blatantly bad, but the one where Rivers jumped was given in the back. Do you remember, down on the wing? So it was in the sort of half-forward flank, half-back flank, I should say. And he gave away a free kick where he sort of climbed on the guy's back. It was arguably there. It was arguably in the back, but it was arguably, maybe, you could give it. And there was an umpire right there, literally right at the contest. He was right in front of it, and he said, no free kick, play on. And so it was going to be a stoppage. Another umpire who was out of zone said, no, he called the free kick. There was a delay. It was right below me, so it was on this wing where I sit. He was 10, 15 metres inside the 50-metre arc. So the ball must have been, without exaggeration, how long's the MCG? 165 metres or something? Yeah. So it must have been 100 metres away. How could he override
Yeah,
the central umpire who's literally standing next to it, and he couldn't have been vision impaired because he couldn't have not been able to see what Rivers did because Rivers was lying on the ground. There was no one around that contest to block looking at the thingo. How's that? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. That's what I want the AFL to explain is how could an umpire 100 metres away, I can do it exactly as George said or you said, Andy, if it's evident, if it's clear, no worries, okay. But the umpire who was there had decided, no, it's not a push in the back. It's not okay for an umpire 100 metres away to override that decision. It's just not okay.
Just on how you just mentioned, occasionally we do hear the AFL say, yeah, we stuffed up that one. You do hear them say that every now and again for a particular decision. Why won't they comment on this one?
Well, I mean, like, what's the
on
comment?
The Cosy one, sorry, the Cosy one.
What's to say is we don't know what happened.
Why, I don't know if Tom Morris is just making, not that he's making it up, but just making it more controversial or whatever by saying that the AFL won't discuss it. Well, if that's true, why won't they discuss it? It's blatant there. It's a pretty big stuff up. I just don't get it.
Well, it seemed to get cut through too because Waitley said it was the worst. It's the worst non-decision I've seen in 20 years.
I saw on social media. I might play it. This is the commentary in what's Wheatley on? What station?
SEN.
SEN. So he commentated on the weekend. This is hopefully Instagram pulls it up. One sec. One sec. I'll start it again.
Back to
it went to the next video, which was some AA video of a mandarin eating itself. Well, that's what where AI has come to. All right, let me play this again.
Lindsay pumps the D's back to full forward after the kick. And battle collided with his own man Hardwick. Pickett got legs. Free kick at the top. What? No free. He got grabbed by the leg, running into goal to pick up the football. Oh my godfather.
How can you miss that?
How can you miss that? There's four of them.
Oh, extraordinary.
45,000 people saw it clear as day.
Oh, boy. They could score review fingers hitting and touching a ball, but a goal like that.
Sack a ball!
D'Ambrosio kicks the ball to half forward. Gorn couldn't take the mark.
50,000 people there. I wonder who were the other 5,000 who didn't see it. Maybe they should all apply to be umpires.
That's the Hawthorn cheer squad, probably.
Yeah, it was unbelievable, and it beggars belief how they couldn't make a call. And as I said, I suspect that's the problem with having a system of four umpires that can overrule each other. They're all waiting for someone else to make a decision. No one does. The moment's gone.
Well, as I said, they're not waiting when they're 150 metres away and they can barely see whether it's a too high when two people are on the ground and they're calling it.
It's unbelievable. And that's, look, I'll do it another time, but that's why professional units pay them. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be more than what they're being paid now. There will be a pathway for young elite athletes who want to be involved in the AFL system, who don't make it as AFL players, who can bring a lot of knowledge and fitness and skill to umpiring, who would give their right bloody leg to get paid 150 grand a year, which is less than the part-time umpires are being paid, some of them, to be involved in an elite system. And then you can measure them. You can measure how many correct performance decisions they make. You can get their timing right. You can ensure their communication with each other is top-notch. You can then hold them to account. But as I say, I literally believe that the AFL has no interest in addressing this, what I think is the biggest blight on the game. The AFL and the AFL Commission are the stewards of the game, and they're failing it. It's ruining football. It is so upsetting. Obviously we'd be less upset. We were 10 free kicks up at one stage. And I think, what was that free kick count in the end?
It was even, I think, at the end.
So I think it was halfway through the second quarter. We were up 10 free kicks. And it ended up being even. What sort of umpiring performance is that? I mean, I know that of course, you get anomalies, but it was just appalling. And there were so many influential decisions, I thought, that went against us.
Yeah. And the non-calls as well, as I always say.
Non-calls.
Singer says, once again, our goal kicking and efficiency going inside 50 let us down and ultimately cost us the game. How we lost that game by 35 points when we could have and should have been 35 points up going into the last quarter is everything that is wrong with this football team. We obviously have the ability to match it with the best teams. We just cannot execute to the point where we are dangerous and punishing to the oppositions. Lazy writes, thought we approached the game well, bought a good game plan, tried to chip it around and use the ground. We controlled it and the game was on our terms. All key stats I wanted to win, we did. We simply didn't finish. It is disappointing that in this do-or-die game we performed admirably but kicked ourselves out of it. I could ask the obvious questions of what can we do to improve our accuracy, but I kind of feel like we're banging our heads against the wall with this one. We've discussed practice, set shot positions, routines ad nauseum, so I'm not going to insult anyone's intelligence. I will make the comment that we prioritised a kid who could clearly kick the footy with our first pick, and it doesn't appear to be a coincidence that his 3 shots on goals all went through with flying colours in a game where no one could hit the backside of a barn. Red and Blue Rising says, why can't we ever find a forward who can nail set shots under pressure? We needed to finish our good work and couldn't. Is there any way to train this skill under game-like pressure? We should have been 3 goals up at three-quarter time. Monocular says, we had more shots on goal at over 3 quarters, but let ourselves down with a shocking conversion rate, especially with our set shots. Is there anything a coaching panel could possibly offer to improve this? It's just so disheartening for fans and supporters to watch these teasers every week. Do the players feel disappointment that us rusted on fans feel? And Radish D says, I'm sick to death of this team losing winnable footy games in this way. It has been too many years and the club has not fixed the problem. We currently sit last in the league in 2025 for accuracy and goals per inside 50 by a full percentage point for each. We have not been above average in either category since 2021. Goodwin and the coaching staff acknowledge it's a problem, but there's no improvement. Maybe kicking technique can't be improved in the AFL, then we should have moved players on and recruited better ones. What are the coaches doing if not improving skills anyway? So, big man, it's frustrating to be able to match it with strong sides, but ultimately let us down with our finishing.
Yeah, I mean, I probably discussed it at length enough in the stats file. I looked at. I have to say, I was so furious with the umpiring on the weekend, and I was really ropeable. But if I was honest, at least part of that anger was a sort of misdirected anger at our shit kicking for goal. It was just like when Windsor missed that, I could have jumped from the second. I could have gone to had a stern word with Goody and Choco. So, buddy. You know,
I don't think that's got to be something else because he's usually got a very good kick for goal. He's got a good technique usually. So when it was pressure or whatever, and players can miss. But yeah.
Well, the question about why can't we ever find a forward? Red and Blue Rising says, why can't we ever find a forward who can nail set shots under pressure? Well, ironically, JVR is an excellent kick.
He just can't get the ball.
Has some shots on goal, and we've had statistically over the last 5 years. I don't know if this may not be true, but I'm going to say it anyway. Is the best kick for goal in the AFL over the last 5 years. I would be shocked or surprised if at least not the top 5 is Fritter. For accuracy, like his one-wood is his accuracy. So we do have players that can kick accurately, and he can't hit. He's shocking. He's got in his head.
That's in his head. That's in his head at the moment. Jefferson's, I think, a very good kick for goal. He just can't get the footy.
Yes, Jefferson. So we think about.
We've got some good kicks.
It was, yes. Every time I watched another game for the footy for the whole weekend, every time bloody a player from another team kicked a goal from the boundary or from 45 metres or 50 metres, I thought, bloody hell, why can't we do that? And it was sort of laughed in the grim Melbourne, we cannot kick for anything camp, was when I was right behind where I was sitting behind that shot by Max that hit the post. And the irony of that was he aimed for that post and he flushed. I said to my mate that he'll get this. This is exactly the right side for him, just with a bit of shape, but his classic shape right to left.
And he was further out than
he was further out. And did you see his expression? Go back and watch the replay. Look at his expression because it's hilarious because he aimed for that and it straightened and hit the post flush. It was like, I reckon he was aiming for it and he hit it. So he hit it perfectly and hit the ball perfectly and, never deviated from that post. I thought it was a goal off the boot. I thought for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely thought it was a goal off the boot. And
I thought he did too. So... Yeah.
It's a never-ending concern, isn't it? What really worries me is that those shots were all easy.
Yep,
they were all easy, 30 metres, 40 metres at the most. They weren't kicking
in the corridor.
And we've been talking about this so long, and supposedly there was a review done of the football department, and yet this same problem that has been around since 2021 is still there.
Same coaching staff, same issue.
Yep.
Exactly.
And
that's what I mean.
Not only those set shots, we missed a couple of those goals on the run. That if you kick them, it brings the house down. It brings the momentum. You get that.
Yeah.
Rush.
Well, particularly like Spargo's was not on the run; it was a set shot. But you're right; 2 or 3 of them were the culmination of really excellent bits of play, good handballs, good linking up, fast ball movement. Exactly what we're all wanting to see, which we saw plenty of. And like the Spargo, it was a brilliant centre clearances. That was the one. Spargo was the one where Chandler seemed to lose it in the sun. And then picked it up at the last second and beelined it and got the ball. It was a brilliant bit of play. Then broke forward. It was a brilliant centre turnover right in the middle of the ground. That was a score from the defensive half, a classic example of it. Get Spargo by himself. You just got to kick him. You just got to kick him 40, not even 30 metres out directly in front. Spargo, you're a goal kicker. You're a forward. There's no, of course, there's excuses. There was zero wind. Like the wind wasn't a factor. There was
perfect
no
day of footy. Red Sharon.
Red Sharon.
And unfortunately, the culmination of that sort of stuff is it absolutely deflates the whole team.
Yeah, well, that's
and the crowd, George. And takes the crowd out of it.
Yeah.
It's so deflating.
All the work that they put in to get the ball down there, and somebody can't kick. And in this case, 4 or 5 players can't kick from 30 metres. It's just kills all the effort. Kills all the effort.
In the last quarter, the goal Cos kicked was like he burnt. If you watch that, he burnt 2 players on the inside that he should have given it up.
Yeah, but sometimes I'm happy for a guy like that to do it. I get frustrated when they then become unselfish and they fluff it up. Like just have a shot yourself.
He missed. He was the first player to break that run of set shots, wasn't he? And he nailed that set shot. And as Lazy notes, that's a really good point about Langford. Is the best player. That's the thing why it's not just good football. Is the best players are good kicks, and Hawthorn have some. I have to say it.
They're one of the
They have some excellent field kicks, and technically they've got great set shots for goals. I mean, Gunston is really brilliant kick, isn't he?
And no, we also just didn't get any of the RC goals with.
And even Meek. I mean, their bloody ruckman kicks their first goal from 30 metres out directly in front.
All right, well, let's get to the next one. A bit of Biff asks, why do we keep dropping off in the fourth quarter? Is it a fitness issue or just a drop-off in pressure or both? We were with them until the last quarter and then just stopped. Same thing happened with Casey. Monocular asks, why do we fade out late in games? Is it poor conditioning or mental fragility? And Adam the God says, I'd be intrigued to hear the team's thoughts on Selwyn Griffiths and our fitness regime. I've had questions as early as 2022 and some during 2023, but after 2024 and now 9 rounds into 2025, to me it now seems undeniable we need a new fitness boss. Our last quarter fade-outs have cost us at least 3, possibly 4 wins, which would sit us in the top 8 right now. Are we all in agreement on this? Is it time to go Selwyn, or are there too many young bodies in the mix which drag out our ability to play 4 quarters? That latter argument is a weak one, in my opinion. Supreme Demon asks, does Selwyn Griffiths, our fitness boss, come under scrutiny now after yet another fourth quarter fade-out? Doug Remus says, we need a new high-performance coach that can get us fit. George, for almost the entire season. Today, we've fielded questions and had discussions about our fitness and last quarter fade-outs, as you alluded to in the opening of the show, and I'm not sure we need to discuss whether it is happening. I think the horse has already bolted to do anything about it this season, and I guess the question everyone's now asking is, do we need a new high-performance department?
Well, go back to what I just said before about the review that we supposedly had, and I think it's pretty obvious to everyone that there is a serious problem around the way this team has been prepared for this season, and it's showing up in these last quarters. One or two games you can always overlook, depending on what's happening in the game. So when you've had 9 matches and we've won one last quarter, I think, against West Coast. By a point against West Coast.
And not just that, have a look at, and we've said it in past shows, the scores. If you add up all the scores, it's drubbing.
Yeah. And the back half of last season was as bad almost.
Yeah. So the review that supposedly we had didn't identify some of the basic problems that we do identify here on Demonland. The sad part is exactly the same thing happened to Casey. We'll talk about that later on. Casey were 26 points up in the third quarter and coasting along very nicely, only to see the Bulldogs turn around with an 8-goal run.
That's the point at which I stopped watching it on the train. We're 26 points up, and then I looked at the score at the end and couldn't believe it.
Yeah, so the same thing's happening throughout. Not all the Casey players train with Melbourne and things like that, but certainly a reasonable percentage of them do. But we're seeing exactly the same problem. So I don't know that we can talk about it anymore. There is a serious problem there. Needs to be addressed. I just keep going. I think there's a bit of an amateur hour still going on with the rotations, which comes back to the fitness staff. Ultimately, people are being rotated who don't need to be rotated. It's starting to really show up in the scoreboard and the way that games are being decided for us.
And in this game, we had the fitness was exacerbated by some players who just weren't who just weren't involved in the game. So, and when one of the things I look at is that if they're running like 400 kilometres plus a game, those 400 kilometres have to be spread across your 23 players, your 22 on the field and the sub. It's worth thinking about that in terms of if suddenly Clary is unable to do 2-3 kilometres because his fitness isn't quite there. I saw someone there was a quote, one of those, what are they saying, a Dingley Street threat, and the Hawks fan said Clary looks like he's towing a caravan. And I thought, that's harsh, but fair, I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
go on.
Yeah, so if you have 2 or 3 players in the side who aren't running their fair share of distance, although I mean he does, he's not particularly quick. It puts stress on everyone.
All over to the phone lines. Let's see if this works. Welcome to the Demonland podcast. Who am I talking to? Oh, hold on a sec. It is not working. It's not going. One sec. I've got to. Oh, now it should be working. Welcome to the Demonland podcast. Who am I talking to? Hello? No, not working. Sorry, guys. Let's continue on.
It's working as well as our forward line.
Our last quarters.
No, it didn't. It didn't connect to. I've got it connected to. I've got my phone connected to via Bluetooth to my mixer, and it answered it on my phone, even though it says that it's connected. Our caller's calling back. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll have to move on. Caller, have I got you? Oh, it's gone to my phone again. Caller, are you there? No, it's not going to my mixer. Sorry, caller, if you can hear me. It's just not working. We'll have to move on. Not your fault. That's technology. Great, good working Microsoft Teams on my iPhone, and the Rodecaster Pro not working very well. Let's move on to our next lot of questions. Lefty says Harvey Langford is an absolute star. If he continues along this trajectory, he's a lock for the Rising Star Award this year. Plays like a 10-year veteran, sticking permanently in the midfield rotation. Supreme Demon says, how good is Harvey the Bison Langford? The kid must be a favourite now for the Rising Star Award. Bin Man, I imagine you're as enamoured with Harvey Langford as I and all of Demonland and the wider Demon community is.
Enamoured. Oh, love the boy. Love the lad. Big lump of a lad. And Andy, top interview with him. He's really sounds like a switched-on young fella, actually. It was the best interview I've heard with him. He's otherwise he's pretty monosyllabic. You know what I'm trying to say.
Well, apparently, according to Spirit of Norm Smith, one of our posters, I'm not much of an interview. I'm not much of an interviewer myself. And please keep your opinions to yourself when you're talking about my performance.
No, I thought your performance
I like to criticise players, but you can't criticise me. Not on my own program.
I did come to your defence, Andy, but
you did. Thank you very much.
One of us come at all. I thought your question was really interesting about playing on the wing. And it was really interesting. He was on the wing quite a lot this game, but he's basically never played wing, is sort of what he said for 2-3 years. Yeah. So, and he's going to create a mismatch problems for other teams right through his career. He was at one point, I have no idea who number 16 for the Hawks is, but he's not particularly tall. And Langford was monstering him standing in next to the on the wing. So he's got something about him. Like I said last week, he thinks quickly. He doesn't move that quickly. He's not particularly graceful, but he gets the ball to boot. You know, it's like George said, I think last week or the week before, he's already in his brain. You can see it. It's like Cos. He's already decided if he gets the ball to him, what he's going to do next. And it's like, it's really clear that he's got that sort of footy brain. I really love the way he uses his body in a marking contest. He took a mark that was pretty much below where you said, Andy, on the sort of half forward flank, was it, or half back flank? I think he took it.
Did he not take the contested marks? He took a couple of
marks
I thought were contested.
That one, he probably took them all. So I'll tell you,
he took one on the wing and one in the forward 50.
Maybe it was him.
So I'll tell you what he got credited with. He got credited with one contested mark.
I'm pretty sure there was another one that was pretty contested to me. Anyway.
Yeah, but just the way he used his body in that contest on that half-forward flank on the member side of the ground, where he just turned at the last second to protect the ball and made sure that there was so many players would have just remained open-chested and the contest would have jarred the ball out of the Army's hands. But he turned his body at the last second to make sure that didn't happen. And it sort of looked like a baseball catch almost. It stuck in a way that was... he's an absolute gun. He had his player rating was 16, which is just awesome. Cozzy, for instance, as example, had 14. He predicted rating in the game was 9, so well above that. 101 super coach points. His time on ground was impressive, George. 82% time on ground. That's a big chunk of time for a young player. He had 22 disposals going at 73% efficiency, 557 metres gained, 2 inside 50, 7 contested possessions, 4 ground ball gets, 5 post clearance contested possessions. He had 3 post clearance ground ball gets, which is so important. We needed more of them. We really need more of them in our forward line. 21% of the time he was on ball. For much more, he had a good crack at being on ball this time. Took 6 marks, one of which was a contested mark. Really, really impressive game of footy. And I like the fact that he's how many score involvements did he have? He had what's his score involvement? So he had just lost his numbers there for a sec.
While you're looking for that, I reckon by the end of the year he'll be the permanent A rotation in the midfield, I think.
Yeah, he only laid the 1 tackle, which is not awesome. He had 6 score involvements. He's got a real want to win. He's a real competitive beast.
He said that in the interview, like he just wants to win.
He just wants to win.
I guess
he's going to be scary good. He'll fill out. I've said this before. I said at the beginning of the season when we were talking about him draft or preseason, he is the same height now as Bontempelli was when Bontempelli was drafted. Bontempelli grew another 2 centimetres, and so will this lad. He will be a serious beast in 2 years' time. Yeah. And again, it goes like you need your best fitness, high performance program to get the most out of these sort of players, don't you? And they got to get that right. And if they do, he is, touch wood, he's with us for his whole career. He's a 300 gamer who is now into pretty much favouritism for the rising star, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, if he continues along that way, 100%. All right, let's move on. Smurf says, it's looking like the drafting and now selection of Jefferson is a bust. He does not present as a physical forward and seriously lacks any second efforts. He looks devoid of confidence and his former Casey has not warranted a recall. Petty and or Milksham should return to replace him. Garbo says Jefferson thrown into the seniors despite not showing he's at the level even in the VFL. Why should we expect different at AFL? Fritsch not pulling his weight again and now not even finishing off in front of goal. D for Life says, was surprised Turner was not moved forward earlier as Jefferson and JVR had hardly touched the ball. Should we be playing Turner forward or back? Personally, I would have started him forward. Jano2 says, what to do with JVR? I can't believe the turnaround in form this season. I don't like him rucking, but he is not contributing in the forward line. He actually looks quite timid and lost at times. Is there any hope he'll come good? I don't think moving him back and forth between the seniors and VFL will aid any return to form. What does the panel think? Watson 11 says, at the end of the first quarter on the AFL app, they quoted that although overall our pressure was 180, in our forward 50 it was only 90 compared to the Hawks 180 in their forward 50. I thought we were done when I read that, as in recent weeks our forward 50 pressure has been a key part of our turnaround. Our forward 50 tackles this week were way down. The Hawks scored 54 points from defensive half. Why was our forward 50 pressure so bad? Was it a tactical change by Goody or just a selection issue with Fritter, Jeffo and a down on confidence JVR just way off it defensively? And Radish D asks, would JVR have benefited from a game against West Coast last week instead of a week off after kicking 5 at Casey? Would one of our most accurate forwards this year in Turner have been better off in the forward line rather than spending 100% game time in defence? I'll just quickly answer that. I think we had to play Turner down back, considering the injuries with Petty and all that. We brought in JVR and Jeffo as a result. So, George, what to do about the mess that's our forward line?
Yeah, after talking about the mess that's umpiring, I now get to talk about the mess that's the forward line. And boy, is it a mess? Yeah, is it a mess? It's a mess all around.
Just before you go, George, we had a discussion about the selection. I was relatively happy with the selection. I thought it was good to give Jefferson his go. I would have dropped Fred a couple of weeks ago, but while he was in there, go. But you weren't, and it certainly proved to be you proved to be correct in terms of the input of Jefferson and Fritter, unfortunately.
Yeah, and like you've been, Matt, it's hard to criticise. You don't want to criticise individual players, but certainly you've got to criticise the selection of Jefferson based on his output at Casey. Like I said, the previous week he had 7 disposals in a team that won by 118 points. And he played. What's worse is he played half the game, if I recall, in the back line. So why would you have a forward playing in the back line and then bring him in? There was apparently a scratch match against Sandringham the week after because Casey had a bye. And Pickett Fence, I think, weaseled his way through the fence and found out that Jefferson actually had a head knock and didn't play very much at all. So we've got a player who hasn't played, 7 disposals in his previous game, and you put him straight into the forward line. Please, guys, that's just pushing the boundaries too much.
We would have loved AJ's aggression, wouldn't we? Sorry. We would have loved AJ's aggression in that game.
Yeah. Sorry,
and
Andy.
why was Milksham managed? I mean, he'd had the week off previously before, with the infection or whatever, the cut from the week before, and then played West Coast, and then they've managed him. Like, are we? Does he need to be?
Mystery injury of the week, whatever it is.
Injured, but
I would have rather bloody him taking Sicily than Spargo, a combination of Spargo and Fritter.
Yeah, going on to the rest of the side, despite I wouldn't have selected Jeffo in the first place, but I don't think he gave the guy a really decent chance in the sense that with these amateurish rotations that they've got, he starts off on the bench, he goes to full forward when JVR goes into the ruck. JVR then goes off the field to let Max back on. So Jeffo gets to play about 10 minutes in a quarter. I don't know that that's going to engender any confidence or display of ability when when this rotation results in players not actually playing on the field all that much. You've got the same problem with JVR, who's still forced to do rucking duties. So Jeffo gets about 10 minutes in a quarter. JVR gets about 15 minutes in a quarter playing the role that they're in the side for. So to top it all off, Fritsch is just, there are no excuses surely anymore. There's just no efforts whatsoever coming into this game. Whether it's on Sicily or whether it's on Weddle, people can talk about it. Either way, he didn't provide any restriction to either of those. Spargo's not providing anything whatsoever. He's kicked one goal for the whole season now. I think he had one tackle in this game, and you sort of go, well, what's he actually doing in there? So all round, and to top it all off, of course, the goal kicking problems that we've talked about previously. We've got forwards who can't kick goals. Not a single goal from any of the forwards in this particular game. It's
not even Cos kicked a goal too.
Yeah, but of the the major forwards that we've got, or the regulars, so to speak, not a single.
And Colt couldn't bring any magic, like nothing really, did he? No. A bit of energy, but energy doesn't pay the bills, I'm afraid.
The real pity is that we actually don't have any other options down at Casey. That Fullerton's it. He's been tried and discarded. AJ should have been in the side in the first place, and sorry, I shouldn't have said no options. AJ is certainly a better option than anything else we've got, but he doesn't seem to be in the goodie basket, so to speak. So,
well, Petty will come back in, and then you'd hope Turner will go back forward.
Yep.
And then eventually Lever's going to go. Eventually Lever's going to come back, and then maybe you can move Petty forward as well.
Yeah.
You got a few more options, but once injuries sort of start to hit,
but we're certainly not getting any output from the smaller forwards.
No,
nothing whatsoever. And
and that's one of our, like, all the talks for these talls. But as I've said often enough, I think our real weakness is those medium, small. Some of those teams are stacked with them. Geelong stacked with them. Bloody
look at Hawthorn
with them, and Hawks,
Hawthorn with Ginnivan and Watson and Moore.
Moore is the player that I keep forgetting. That he's a and I thought actually defensively we did pretty well to shut them out. And Bowie continued on his run, but it is telling that our four lowest rated players on the ground were forwards: Jeffo, Fritter, Colt. Well, to be fair to him, it was only one quarter, and then Tom Sparrow. That says a lot, doesn't it? When you're four lowest rated players, who it's worth noting, just in terms of Fritter's rating, to give him not really an out, but the way that player rating, they really, as I think I've mentioned a couple of times, they really penalise players for missed shots on goals, and the easier the shot on goal, he would have got maximum loss of points for the two set shots he missed, particularly the one at the end of the first quarter. Good Lord, Jesus wept.
We might have Terence online. Terence, are you there? Terence, can you hear me? Oh, no. Okay.
On the line, can you hear me, Andy?
Terence, I had the wrong fader on my mixer up. I had the phone one on. Now I've got you. Terence, how are you going?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for giving me a link. I appreciate it.
That's all right. Managed to share Terence a link to our Microsoft Teams. So, Terence, what do you want?
I'm getting it repeated at the moment, Andy. So
Oh yeah, that's probably my. So I'll let you ask your question, and then you can jump off.
and then I'll go. Okay. So first time for the year. Thanks to Skype being a bit of a problem, but I wanted to ask you guys. Okay, I wanted to ask. I know you talked about the high performance staff earlier in the call. But I admit that I was quite disappointed with Simon Goodwin's press conference when he said that it came down to the fact that we were not up to standard. And I don't understand how a professional football team can't be prepared and up to standard. I understand about lack of skills and, kicking and things like that, but being up to standard to me is an indictment on both the coaching staff and the high performance staff. I'm just wondering on whether you guys picked up on that in the presser and if you have any thoughts on it.
All right, Terence, I'll let you go because I'm not sure what's if you get feedback. It's probably Microsoft Teams, but thank you, Terence. Big man, you want to? Oh, George, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, up to standard. I mean, was he? Don't know whether the question was in reference to the fitness staff. Was he asked about the fitness staff?
I don't know Terence on the line.
I can't recall.
Yeah, I mean. I thought our effort was reasonable. We just fell away, and we couldn't keep going. That to me, it felt like it just felt like that at the ground. I don't know about what you guys felt. It just felt like we just weren't able to go with them when they, if we talked about that all the time in 21, didn't we? We could up our ratings and then other teams would crack. I hate the feeling other teams. They're saying to themselves at the 3/4 time huddle, we'll run over these guys. That's what it felt like at the ground. Everyone around me was feeling it. It felt like that. So, I reckon Goody might, Goody's not going to throw the high performance program under the bus. I wouldn't think so. I think something like not up to standard is like a motherhood statement, get me out of the press conference type sort of nothing statement. So, to be honest, I thought George's point, we weren't up to standard with some of our field kicking in the first quarter when fitness wasn't a problem. Like some of our mistakes were just poor mistakes, and it's just, again looking at the player breakdown. I think some of our individual performances weren't up to standard. I actually agree with Goody if that's what his comment is, that there were a number of we carried too many players to be beating a top 4 side, that's for sure. George?
Yeah, I'm not sure what he was talking about exactly either, but it's pretty obvious that there are all sorts of components into winning a football game which were simply not up to standard, be it the forward line, be it the fitness level, whatever else you can think of, but well below standard, and the ease at which Hawthorn overran us. We were only 2 goals down halfway through that last quarter, and you sort of think, well, we're still in this, but then to be, they didn't give up, but they just had nothing, absolutely nothing left in that last 15 minutes.
And that was one of the more depressing things, wasn't it, George, is that even though Cozzy kicked the goal that got us sort of against the run of play, in my heart of hearts, I still didn't think we were going to be able to roll back over the top of them. I thought to myself, that's a pretty sinking feeling, thinking we're not going to, as soon as they got in front, I thought we can't win this game now. And, it's a bit like in horse racing when your horse gets headed. Not many times in horse racing does the one come back. And then you watch the bloody Crows Port game and it's nip and tuck and you see the Roos come back. It was quite, but I agree. I thought the effort was still there and you can't ask much more than that. If they haven't got the fuel in the tank, they haven't got the fuel in the tank. And we have got a pretty young side compared to that Hawk side yesterday too.
We've got another caller on Microsoft Teams. I think it's Fab Demon. Is that, am I correct?
Yeah, David from Adelaide. How you going?
David, how you going?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Are
Are you getting feedback on your end?
No, I can hear your dulcet tones very well.
Oh, beautiful. Excellent. So welcome to the podcast again. Welcome back. What do you have to say?
A couple of comments. I went to the 30-year member and interstate members function, and Lever was the speaker at the actual function itself, and he was actually a good communicator, but very, very candid. What was interesting is he said to the crowd that the reason why he believed the first 5 weeks was so poor was that they were so focused on dealing with the problem of deliveries into the forward 50 that they forgot about defence and pressure. I've got to say, I found that quite strange, quite frankly, that you can't improve one aspect of your game without the whole team collapsing over 5 weeks in regard to it. But that was pretty accurately what he actually said in regard to it. And I can't understand how a team could be so inflexible that just trying to improve one aspect put the entire team off the rest of their game. The second thing is that with respect to Melksham, Lever said that it was an injury, that he had a minor injury during training, and they didn't want to risk him because they didn't want to have him out for a prolonged period of time, which might answer the earlier question that you raised in regard to it. Thirdly, I was at the game, obviously, and a lot of the time the forwards in previous programs have been excused by way of the delivery into the forward 50. But it's quite clear we have a forward 50 problem. I mean, there were that many set shots that were missed in regard to it. There was the sitter of JVR in regard to it, was just simply not up to standard. I mean, I think it's a bit rich that you only can mark the ball if it's not being delivered to you at a 45-degree angle at an AFL standard. And I, to draw an analogy with the soccer association football analogy, it's like we're playing with no strikers in regard to it. The fact was, for 3 quarters, I think we were the better team defensively and we were the better team midfield. But it all amounts to naught if you can't score a goal. And I mean, Bailey Fritz was, again, just not up to AFL standard. There were numbers of players in their forward line who had opportunities to score goals and just didn't score goals, either because they couldn't take a mark or, importantly, they just couldn't take a set shot. And the fact is, if they'd even taken the set shots that they had, we probably would have been 3 to 4 goals up minimum by 3/4 time.
Oh, it's a good point, Dave. I thought that kicking inside 50 was actually pretty good. It wasn't. You're right. That wasn't the issue. That certainly wasn't the issue. It does make a big difference. We're 11-4. That game looks differently as opposed to 4-11. I mean, that's stating the bloody obvious, I guess. But I mean, that's the interesting comment about the beginning of the season. I don't know that they would necessarily. It's not so much about focusing on one area, but if you're conscious about that delivery, that maybe it's easy for, it's a game of such small margins. But, maybe you lose a little bit of focus on the other stuff, not sort of consciously, more subconsciously. But I agree. I thought our defensive system was much better this week, looked really strong. Though, the midfield, we really didn't get much bang for a buck from our stoppages and stuff. But
I mean, what's disappointing is we have some brilliant players. I mean, we're not a team without brilliant players. Max Gawn is right up there. Petrarca played a reasonably good game. There were passages of really brilliant play, but often that they just didn't amount to any form of conversion to a goal. Sometimes not even to a point in regard to it.
Yep. I know. That's
go
ahead.
Yeah, I mean, but the problem is, I mean, the coaching staff have to take some responsibility on this. we've known that there's been a problem in that forward 50 for years now.
Yeah.
And not enough has been done. I mean, it just clearly not enough has been done. It's one thing to have a team and keep on saying, repeating. By the way, what I said about Lever was almost a direct quote. So whether that's true or not, clearly, he was very candid. That's what they believed, that they were overly focusing on that aspect of the game to the detriment of the other. And I'm just thinking, that's a pretty fragile side that loses their DNA because they're simply focusing on what was an obvious problem in regard to it. But I just felt myself that even with Lever, who, as I said, I thought was an excellent speaker and very candid, a very rigidity about the way they played, a real rigidity about the way they played, and a very entrenched way of playing in regard to it. And I think that's costing us continual persistence with players who don't. And I mean, it's enough to say now, well, we just don't have the players. But this isn't a new problem. This is a problem that's been going on for years.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. I think I do believe we need change. I don't know if it's possible due to some contractual and money issues, but I think it's the only thing that's going to fix it. I think we've got a good list.
We do.
Obviously, there's some fat that probably does need to be trimmed, but it's there. The bones are there. I think it just needs a whole new mindset and a new way of looking at it, and maybe we need a clean out at the top. Yep.
I'd go stronger than that. We've actually got a very good team.
Yep.
All right. Our midfield, we've got the best ruckman in the competition. He was simply outstanding at times in that game. We have gun players.
Yep.
We have good young players coming through. This isn't a Richmond. This isn't a West Coast Eagle.
No.
I mean, this is it's actually a pretty damn good team. It's very isolated areas where the players are not even playing average. They're simply not even playing to AFL standard. In fact, some of them, you doubt it's almost VFL standard in regard to it. And I was watching the showdown, obviously from Adelaide, between the Crows, and you looked at people, say the Crows, I mean, they had Thilthorpe, they had 2 or 3 players that consistently they could kick to and consistently scored goals.
Yep.
And we just don't have that. There's no confidence. We do better on goals on the run than we do in set shots, which is unbelievable from 30 metres out.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I have zero confidence in any of our players having shots for goal at the moment. And that just could be me.
Well, you don't. But, I mean, you take Bailey Fritz. I remember going to one of the games here in Adelaide where he played against Port Adelaide. It was a terrific match. It was very close. He couldn't miss a goal.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it was like threading it through a needle. I remember being there. I was near the Demon Army. And his goal kicking was superb. It was elite. Now, there must be some explanation for such extraordinary loss of form where he can't hit a barn door 30 metres out and plays with no confidence whatsoever.
I think the technical term is the yips.
Anyway, well, yeah. I don't know. They're just, it's just clear that there's been a lot of emphasis, and they kept on emphasising the delivery into inside 50s. But it's quite clear a good part of the problem is the inside 50. I mean, it's not the delivery. I mean, the delivery was okayish.
Yeah.
And I mean, what do you have forwards who only expect perfect delivery and don't like it from 45 degrees? I mean, I think Bidman's comment about the 45 degrees was spot on. But, I mean, that's a huge concern if you expect the ball to not be delivered at 45 degrees to you. And it can't take a mark under no pressure. In fact, it was one of his fellow players next to him, nobody else.
David, thank you.
Anyway,
you've made me more
thank you for your
depressed.
time.
Thank you. I didn't think that was possible. Thank you for your call.
Well, I didn't mean to, but the realistic.
It
I
is
mean,
really,
you have to be realistic about
I
these
know.
situations.
I know.
Catch you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good on you, David.
Really appreciate it. That was David from Adelaide, return caller, like his calls. Let's get on to the next one. Viper Crunch says, thoughts on how Windsor has been going off half back. I've been concerned for many weeks with how he's been going down back, and there were several moments today that has led me to conclude he doesn't have the temperament to handle the pressure back there. I think for his sake and for the betterment of the team, he needs to return to the wing or half forward where he proved to be a real weapon for us in his first year. So, B-Man, what do you think about Windsor, the experiment down back? Has it been a success or a bust, or is it just too difficult to judge considering the season that we've had?
Well, I think this is really what goes to the question I asked both of you at the top of the show, is that let's accept that we're not going to make finals. Then it's all about getting this game plan right. It's going to and to build the way that we want to play going forward. And so you don't jump off shifts. If he's important to that method, which they've clearly identified his speed and leg speed and run and carry has been critical to our transition from the back half. He's not played junior footy at all as a defender. He's game 6. He missed a couple, didn't he? So he's game 4 or 5 into his career as a defender. Got to stick with it. I see Viper Crunch's thing. I had my concerns too. Some of his positioning in previous weeks, he gets lost a little bit. He's got a tough role because it's not man on man. He's been asked to link up, but just ironically, this was his best performance. I thought he was actually excellent in this match. I thought and this is really important in terms of how they want him to play. So Massimo D'Ambrosio had 16 handballs received. Josh Ward had 13. That handball receive, and Warple was their next one with 12, is critical to the way Hawthorn play their footy. They get players with that first handball receive, and then they get the ball moving, get it to the outside, and that's critical to the way they want to transition the footy. Caleb Windsor in this match had 12 handball receives. And that's exactly how they want to use him, to give that. He got run down at one stage, which was frustrating when Maxi handballed to him on the halfback flank. But we've got to accept that that's going to happen. I thought his defensive positioning was much better. They want that run. He had 403 metres gained. He had 5 score involvements from the back half, which the top on the ground was 10. So from a halfback flanker, that's pretty impressive, 5 score involvements. So I actually think it was probably his best game and a really good his best game this season, and a really good example of how they want to use him defensively as a transition starter and someone who gets that ball, gets that first handball. As I said, that handball that he got run down when Max gave it to him, it's frustrating when it happens, but that's in a nutshell how they want to use Windsor. He doesn't look a totally natural defender. I don't know what you think, George, but they're obviously committed to using him for that role, and it's exactly what they've got to stick with. We've got to stick with our method, what we're trying to implement, and suck up some losses, suck up some rundown tackles, suck up some sort of defensive errors a player like Caleb Windsor might make because he's not, been there. But I think he's been improving week on, week out, and that was his best game at halfback this season.
I think he's an absolutely superb wingman, but we actually don't need another wingman.
We've got fucking Serbian of them, haven't we?
In the sense that we've got Langdon and Lindsay.
And
Langford on the other side. I think Langford eventually will go into the middle, but it still leaves, what do you do with Windsor in that scenario? So, I think this is more a teaching exercise. What I think they're trying to do is turn him into McVie Mark II. Mm-hmm. So that we've got someone with that bit of run out of the back line. Salem's very, very slow, and I think someone like Caleb will eventually replace Salem's type of role coming in the back line. But he just needs time down there. We've just got to accept it.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to the Casey game. The Casey Demons succumbed to a fast-finishing Footscray, going down by 18 points in a match that was theirs to lose at Whitten Oval, despite holding a 26-point lead late in the third quarter and controlling key areas of the ground. Casey was overwhelmed in the final stanza as Footscray polled on 8 of the game's last 9 goals of the match. After a sluggish opening in tricky conditions, Casey settled quickly and matched the Bulldogs' physicality around the contest. The Demons trailed by just 5 points at quarter time, and by halftime had clawed their way to within a point through improved composure and ball control through the middle. Their relentless pressure and better forward entries were rewarded, giving them momentum heading into the second half. Casey's most dominant passage came during the third quarter, where their intensity and clean ball movement put them firmly in the driver's seat, and midway through the term they led by 26 points and looked to be coasting towards an important win. However, a flurry of 3 late goals from the Bulldogs in the final 5 minutes of the third term cut the deficit to just 8 points and reignited the home side's belief. What followed was a final quarter the Demons will want to forget. Footscray took full advantage of Casey's structural breakdowns and turnovers, running in waves and relentless pressuring the Demons into mistakes. The Bulldogs kicked another 5 unanswered goals before 2 late majors from Paddy Cross added some respectability to the final margin. The damage was most evident in the numbers. The Bulldogs scored 9 goals and 1 behind from their final 10 scoring shots. It was a collapse marked by lost composure and a significant drop in forward half pressure. Casey fielded 12 AFL-listed players, but was notably missing Blake Howes, held over for the AFL duties, Jack Billings and Tajwa Woden, whose absence, unexplained, was keenly felt as the game wore on. There were, however, strong individual performances across the ground. Bailey Laurie led the way with 27 disposals and 6 clearances, while Mitch Hardy, 26 disposals, 1 goal. Riley Boldy and Kynan Brown, 25 each, and Ollie Seston, 24, were tireless through the middle. Brown also laid 10 tackles and had 7 clearances, enhancing his case for an AFL return. Veteran ruck Tom Campbell, 21 disposals, 41 hitouts, 10 clearances, and his understudy Will Varell, 14 hitouts and 12 disposals, controlled the stoppages for much of the match, while Jack Henderson, 23 disposals, and defenders Jed Adams and Luca Kentfield were steady for most of the afternoon. And up forward, Paddy Cross and Tom Fullerton each kicked 3 goals, with Cross also contributing defensively with his pressure acts. Aidan Johnson added 2 majors and was dangerous around goal. Despite the loss, the Demons showed some promising signs for 3 quarters, but their inability to sustain pressure and composure late in games remains a concern. The defeat leaves Casey ruining what could have been as they prepare for a challenging home match next week against 2024 grand finalists, the Southport Sharks. George, did you happen to watch the game?
Yeah, watch the game. It was a pretty good summary you just gave there of it. The interesting thing was the lack of scoring in the first half, in particular. I think it was 1 goal to 2 goals at the first quarter, and the ball just seems to be just bouncing from one 150-metre arc to the other. And if people haven't seen it, the mark of the year was taken by Luca Kentfield. Absolute screamer. He was as high off the ground as Sean Smith was years ago. It was a...
Don't talk about Sean Smith being high off the ground. I know that's the wrong Smith.
All right. Yeah. Anyhow, Luca, he was... That was something seriously great to watch. Impressive people were Aidan Johnson. He just worked so hard. Which I think is what we absolutely need in the forward line. Someone who's prepared to go at everything, every time. You don't ask questions about him. I was really impressed with Henderson in particular, because they threw him onto the ball. I don't know where he was before, but he was quite
forward.
He was quite instrumental in he just kept getting the ball. So I think he's got. I think we can use him in a variety of options, particularly as a small forward.
Pressure forward, yeah.
Yeah, so that was something. Seston was better than he's been, started to get involved in the game. So when he's got the ball, particularly when it's in an uncontested situation, he's great. It's really great delivery. He struggles in contested sort of scenarios, but he absolutely nailed one straight onto Fulton's chest
It was a beauty.
from a long way out. Yeah, so good to watch. Ferrell's slowly getting better and better, and I think it's because he's building into his body more, particularly at the VFL level, where you run into guys who are 10 years older than you and have already got the strong bodies. But yeah, he's slowly starting to show something. I'd be really interested to see them try Kentfield up forward. I really would. I think he, with his height and his athletic ability, I think he can really show us something.
Isn't that where he started?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, but they were playing him down the back line in this match. So, it's difficult to say. It was really, really disappointing. With 26 points up in the third quarter and had the game absolutely on toast, and then just stopped. Just came to a complete and utter stop, and Footscray took full advantage of it and kicked 8 goals straight. Game was over.
Jeez. I quite like Sexton. I think that, and particularly, I think hopefully he can go back forward because he's a sort of small forward we need. Just as a sort of random thought, George, how good condition is Whitten Oval in, and I couldn't help. I know it's a bit of a cliche, or not a cliche, but I couldn't help think, God, we need a bloody home ground. You need a training facility that you see how big the ground is now. They've extended it down at the northern end, and I presume it's so far back from the boundary line to the fence now. So I presume they can do different things like cones to make it different size shape, MCG shape or size or dimensions and stuff. They've got a high performance thing that's just been finished behind. They've got the grand stuff inside. I don't know if you've been there lately. They've done a great job at Whitten Oval.
Used to be an absolute bog heap, an absolute awful place to go and watch football.
It's $1 million now, and it just has to be an advantage for them. It just has to be. All of their equipment's there, all of their admin's there. That the surface is great. They're not having to clean up dog poo before they do training. They just got to fix that, don't they? Get a training ground sorted.
All right, let's get into the changes. Last week, Vice Captain Jack Viney was the mystery injury of the week. He reported symptoms late in the week last week and was diagnosed with delayed concussion from the hit that he received in the Eagles match. He then entered concussion protocols, but due to the recency of the reporting of symptoms, the club was working with the AFL to determine his progression through the concussion protocols. And for that part that I just said, I was paraphrasing what GM of footy, Alan Richardson, said. But it sounds like because they reported it late, that it's possible he only went into concussion protocols towards the end of last week, around about when selection was. So this is just my reading of the situation. I don't think Jack's going to be available this week either.
I thought Goody had said he won't be available.
He won't be. And that's because of when he was diagnosed with the concussion protocols.
Yep. And Schofield has got the cheek. The way that just drives me nuts, the way the commentators gave that kid a free pass for that. It was a shock. He's a young bloke. He completely mistimed it, but it was all about him, not Jack getting whacked in the head. Turns out we're going to miss him for 2 bloody weeks. The guy gets 1 week for that. 1 week. Cos would have... He'd be out for the rest of the season.
Cos would have been in prison for that. Harrison Petty was also concussed during the Eagles match, but I'm assuming because his condition was reported on the night that he should be available this week, providing symptoms have subsided. Jake Melksham, who was managed last week, should be available too, but who knows if there's, as our caller David from Adelaide said, perhaps there was an injury there that they were just managing him through. So hopefully he's back. Big Gun, a poster on Dreamland, says, think we need to seriously consider resting Max this week. Campbell had a full game for Casey this week, and the Lions are probably a game we will struggle to win. We have to manage the big man, and with winnable games against Swans and Saints after that, seems the logical time for Max to stay in Melbourne is this week. So, George, followed by Big Man, what do you think about resting Max this week, and also what other changes might you make?
I don't think we'll be resting Max because he is so essential to any of our operations.
Resting Melbourne.
No. But what he said was resting Max because we're not going to win it. So let's rest him.
Wins aren't the thing anymore.
I think what we need to do is do something about giving Max a rest during the game, a proper rest. And here's the opportunity with either Campbell or AJ, you pick which one, to come into the side as a resting ruck. I mean, when you're playing,
AJ, I prefer.
When you're playing people like Jefferson 10 minutes and a quarter, then surely you can bring in a Campbell or an AJ, either one, to play 10 minutes on the ground, which is all Max needs in terms of giving him a rest. But you've got to make that decision. So I'd imagine that Melksham comes back in. I wouldn't be surprised if Laurie comes back, gets another chance, given the amount of work he was doing down at Casey. Henderson.
You're saying giving him a rest from Casey by playing him in the seniors.
Yeah, but look, we need if Viney's not if Viney's not in the side because of again, we need something. We need something else in the middle. Laurie's the most obvious one at the moment. We've tried him before. I don't know whether he's up to the right standard, but I think he's the best that we've got at the moment, unfortunately.
And maybe, George, it's time to give him a proper run at it.
Yeah. Anyhow, the other one for me was Henderson. He put in a pretty good performance, I thought, down at Casey. Going out, and the other reason that we have to bring in some decent backup for Max is, firstly, we don't have to use JVR and let him have a decent run at playing full forward. Is that Brisbane have got both Fort and McInerney, two seriously good, big, solid
Campbell
body.
In.
Yeah, so bring a Campbell in, or even an AJ, but Campbell would be probably
one or the other.
One or the other. Out, Jeffo doesn't deserve to be there. Fritsch doesn't deserve to be there. Unfortunately, Colt probably would have to step aside for one of those smalls that I've mentioned, maybe even Sharp, depending on which one you want to make sub. But
I think Colt,
and hopefully Petty comes back in as well. So I think we've got to start now that people are realising that we're not going to be making finals. We now need to start making some seriously good decisions and some considered decisions about who's in the side.
Yeah, Colts probably does, even for his confidence, a couple of games at Casey.
Yep.
But I'm retiring from making any. I haven't got anywhere close this year. But I think you've got to drop Fritter, don't you? Like, you just can't have 4 or 5 games at that level and have him in the team.
And the other one that's really on wood and would otherwise be is Spargo. One goal in 8 games now he's played, and not performing similarly, unfortunately, to Fritter.
I think you've got to stick with JVR, and he'll come good. I think people just it's a cliche because it's true. Is big men take time, and the game is littered with forwards who sort of even now you look around the league. There's any number of players, Cadman being one of them.
Cadman's the best example,
but there's others. The two Sydney talls, Logan McDonald. Everyone was talking about Logan McDonald was the second coming. It's Oscar Allen was the best young full forward in the league. I mean, he's not that young anymore, but he's not. Tracy is truly gone off the boil. People were saying he's the best thing since sliced bread. So it happens. I just hope this sort of dip, he gets out of it sooner rather than later. JVR, that is.
Okay, let's get into the preview. The D's come up against the reigning premiers and top of the table Brisbane Lions at their fortress at the Gabba. The Lions will be rueing the loss of 2 points in their draw against the Kangaroos and will not want to drop any more points against another lowly side. Beware the wounded lion. Big man followed by Georgia preview of this week's match.
Look, They're just going, Brisbane, but I reckon that them and Collingwood are the two best sides in the AFL. I really think we're trying to graft a combination game plan of Brisbane, what they bring, and Collingwood, those forward handballs. But in particular, the two things that those two teams have that are similar. They want to control the tempo, which is what we were trying to do at different times on the weekend. It's what Hawthorn do as well. All of the teams are doing, all the best teams are doing that at the moment. And as sort of evidence of the way of how that looks on statistically is the Lions are ranked first in kicks per game, ranked first in marks per game. Those two obviously go together because it's that chipping around. Speaking to George's point about their ruck combination, they're fifth in hit-outs per game. They're third for inside 50s per game. This is and they're not even playing the best footy yet, nowhere near it. Ranked first for clearances per game. So, again, to George's point about their ruck work, but, they've got a seriously impressive, totally impressive midfield. Their average leaders are Zorko is averaging 22 kicks a game. He's their best average kick. Lachie Neale is next for his handballs, 13.5 handballs per game. Harris Andrews, this is key, and I think obviously Melksham, or not obviously, but if Melksham comes back in, he'll take Harris Andrews, has done in the past, but he's averaging nearly 8 marks per game, and a big chunk of them are obviously intercept marks.
We're going to kick down his throat all game.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's hopefully we won't do that. We've just got to bring that ball to ground, don't we? But then you look at their clearance winner is Dunkley, Hugh McCluggage, which is, he's not, I think he's hardly a household name. He's got the most goal assists for him. So they're strong across the line. And I've said now for the last couple of years, I think their one wood really is that fleet of small to medium mids forwards who just knock up kicking goals. I always, for some reason or other, Bailey's the player that comes to mind, but McCluggage is in there, and is it Lincoln McCarthy?
Yep.
He's injured, but
that's and then of course Cameron, who is a medium forward as well. Probably McVee will get them. We've actually done better against those type players this year, in part because McVee's back now, and I think that he's done a brilliant job at Bowie in terms of his being a small defender and winning his share of one-on-ones. We didn't lose a one-on-one defence on the weekend. Not one. Oh, no, that can't be true. We got out. It was 0% defensive one-on-one, but maybe it is. So up forward, I don't think we lost a single defensive marking contest. So tough game for us to beat them. I think we don't, match up super well against them. To be honest, I watched a tiny bit of that North Melbourne game and turned it off when they got to 25. Could not believe it ended up being a draw. I haven't even looked at how that happened. So they're coming off a draw to the Roos.
Yep.
Yeah. I was the same as you, Ben, man. Watched half the game and I thought, this is just going to keep on going. But what really struck me was even when Brisbane were leading by, I think it was about 20 points that I turned it off, was they were only doing that at half pace. They're just going, aren't they? They were just going. Yeah. They weren't pushing themselves by any stretch of the imagination. So
they're looking ominous, that's for sure. And it'll be really interesting to see what tactics. We know their game plan better than probably any other team. They've been, they haven't really changed their method, particularly for the last 3 years. Why would they want to flag? But we've just got to make sure that we, try and get our intercept marking going. That's where you really miss Lever, is not taking those intercept marks. And, we've got to make sure that we don't let the ball hit the deck because they'll run amok back there. And it's obvious we've got to take our chances when we inevitably get the momentum going our way.
Yeah, they've got so much talent across every single line. And
they do, don't they?
They're like you said, those small runners that they've got.
Bring the two young, what are they? The two Fletcher boys.
The Fletchers and the Ashcrofts.
Sorry, no.
Both
I'm thinking
Ashcroft's.
Ashcroft's is what. Yeah. And even
Yeah.
Jai Lohman, who's
Yep.
look at that's half a dozen, 8, 9 sort of players who.
Yeah.
I think those players are really critical in footy, and we don't have enough of them, and that's why it's really disappointing. Colt is exactly that sort of player, but he just hasn't been giving us anything up forward.
Yeah. I think Berry's out this week with a concussion, but I think I also heard that Kitty Coleman's played in the VFL this week and may well be available as well. So they lose one, they bring in someone who's just as brilliant. But yeah, they've got so much talent across the whole lot, and I don't think they're missing very much.
No.
Should be a wonderful podcast next week, and that's where I think we're going to leave it. And you can join us next week to break down our round 10 match against the Lions. And if you want to listen to the show live as it happens, please head on over to demonland.com on Monday nights at 8 p.m. And thank you to our 5-star reviewer on Apple Podcasts. That was Room with a Pew. Thank you. Thank you to our callers. We had Terence and David from Adelaide. Great calls. And as always, your questions and comments are an integral part of the show. So thank you to our Demonland posters who submitted questions and comments. Thank you to Master Chief, Clintosaurus, D for Life, Supreme Demon, Singer, Lazy, Red and Blue Rising, Monocular, Radish D, A Bit of Biff, Adam the God, Doug Reamer, Garbo, Jane02, Watson 11, Viper Crunch, Big Gun, Jaden H10, Palestes, Demonized, Doomsday D, Damien Jr., and Rostar. Not Rostar, that's Row Star. So thank you to my co-hosts, George and B-Man, and thank you to you, our loyal listeners. Don't forget to check out the interview I did with Demon Rising star Harvey Langford. I take full credit for the game he had on the weekend. That interview, he would not have kicked those 3
Can you
goals.
interview maybe like a dozen players this weekend?
Just give me them all this week.
Interview Jeffo.
I'll do a team interview. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts, and we'll read it out and give you a shout out on the show next week. Go Demons.
Go Red Leggers.